Well, welcome back again to another episode of My Hope is Built On. We're here today with Nathan Ryan. And Nathan is somebody that we've known for, well, quite some time. I'd say at least 15, 20 years now, I would think. And we met Nathan. He was a much younger version of himself than he is back when we started at a church called Heart of the Canyons, who his dad is the pastor of. And so we got to know his dad and the family really well during that time period. And so um, before we get started, Nathan, I'd love to go through a litany of all the great things that you've accomplished, but I know that you've got some things that you can share about yourself better than I can share. So I'm going to pass the baton to you and just go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience and let them kind of know who you are, what you're doing, and, some personal things about your beautiful wife. And I won't spill the beans on her name. You can tell everybody. But anyways, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm excited to be here with you. And yeah, my lower back reminds me every day that I was a lot younger when we knew each other, when we met each other.
Yeah.
And my knees, specifically my left knee.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, I'm excited to be with y'all today. Right now, I mean, I've got a list of things, but I'll keep it at the high level. I run a company called Blue Sky Partners. We focus on working with companies that are scaling or growing and helping them work through those, necessary business model, operational, and scale related changes that might need to be made. We tend to work with our clients for about a year on those things, interject some coaching here and there as well. And then I'm a city commissioner. I focus, I'm on the economic development, or I'm on an economic development commission called the Economic Prosperity Commission, focused on budgeting related to job creation and infrastructure.
Right.
And then I'm on the Urban Transportation Commission, focused on transportation in the city of Austin, which is where we live. And my wife and I moved here to Austin in 2015, just because we absolutely love this city. My wife worked for Whole Foods at the time. And now she works at Amazon. She started there in January. She's a total bad A, star. And I'm really lucky to be married to her. And I'm glad she's put up with me for 11 years. We got 2 dogs named Max and Rory. And, I think that's kind of the high level.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, I definitely know, Nathan, just following you, just through social world, right? Is that you got a busy schedule. So, and we're thankful that you took the time to be with us here today and be a part of this. So it's really exciting.
Absolutely.
One of the things I was thinking about is, when we talk about this show, is that obviously the idea is really about spreading more hope in the world. And so we're trying to get everybody's perspective on the word hope. A lot of people, come from different walks of life, and so there's obviously different perspectives based upon the journey that you've been on. And so we're just opening up the door for everybody to kind of share that. And one of the things is, again, talking to you is, when you think of hope, what do you think of? What does it mean to you? And then again, what is your hope built on?
Yeah, I love this question for a lot of reasons, and I could probably go in a bunch of different directions. As y'all know, I grew up in a very evangelical Christian household. I still absolutely consider myself a Christian. And I think because of my faith in Jesus, I find hope there, but I also find hope in where I think you find Jesus, which is in other people and in the way that they show up for one another. Right. And I take very seriously the idea that, you'll know people by the fruits that show up in their life, and you'll know, you'll see God you can see God in each other. You can see how people go out of their way to serve one another. I was listening to a song this morning. I've lapsed into like nostalgia lately, and I'm listening to Switchfoot, which I haven't listened to in forever. I haven't listened to much of the music that I grew up listening to, much of the Christian music that I grew up listening to in a very long time.
Right.
It's all Chris Stapleton and stuff like that for me at this point. But I've lapsed back into Switchfoot, and they've got this song called "The Shadow Proves the Sunshine," where, and I just think that line is so good, because to me, I think we're going through a really, really transformative moment in the world. And I think we're seeing a lot of darkness, and I think we're seeing a lot of shadows. And to me, that just means that there's something really bright behind it. And I see that in other people. And I see that in the way that people show up for one another. And I guess a very concrete example of that would be, Texas had, we were talking about this a minute before we started recording. Texas had a freeze in February that shut off power and water for 40% of the state ish. And the way that Austin and the rest of the state just absolutely dropped everything, and people were turning into, people turned into massive organizers to move an incredible amount of goods and service one another, bring food to people. I mean, that to me is hope, right? That's how that's how I see hope showing up in the world. And that's what it means to me.
It's funny. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that story about what went on just recently with Texas, and I think we've seen that throughout the world whenever we've had significant crisis situations. That I think of 9/11, and I think of how the world rallied, and how we saw hope manifested in the lives of people as they were helping dig people out of rubble and things of that nature. And so, I think that's obviously, it's a beautiful, beautiful picture. But you also mentioned something too, that hope shows up in the way that people engage or continue in their fruits, right? What is your thoughts on, and I know I'm probably taking this a different direction, but what is your thoughts when you think about that, about after the crisis, though, after the dust is settled, after people are back on their feet, all of a sudden the disengagement stops, and we're still not bringing hope to the table any longer, because now we don't see where I can bring it, because it's not a catastrophe that's forced me to come into the situation. And what, and I know, and the reason I say that is because I know in your own life, is that you continue to try to bring hope daily, beyond a crisis situation. And so again, how is that something that people could do, is not just to respond to a crisis, but to respond on a daily basis to bring hope?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, they're matters of scale, right? It's when you're in crisis, the displays of hope you're seeing are people really, really showing up in very loud ways because they have to, right? You have to show up that way.
Right.
And it's going to be much more dramatic in a 9/11 or a Texas freeze type scenario than it is going to be in everyday life. But I think when the kind of drama ratchets down and the danger ratchets down, I still think, I'm constantly thinking about people that I see walk up to a homeless individual here in Austin. We're having this massive debate, like most cities are, about how you handle and mitigate homelessness. We've got an election today with something on the ballot focused on that. But in the midst of all of that, it brings me a lot of hope when I see people walk up to a homeless individual, ask them how they're doing, see what they need, bring them food. I don't have to care about what that person's, and I hope, you all should know this, having known me for a long time and followed me on social. I don't really care. My first question is never going to be, what political party are you? What do you believe? Right. My question is going to be, how are you showing up every day, and what are you doing to help people around you? And so seeing people do things like that, right? Show up for a homeless individual, show up for a friend or a coworker who's struggling with something. Just taking somebody out for a coffee or a drink to see how they're doing, I think goes a really, really long way. And so I do think they're matters of scale. But those really, really small things are just as meaningful. And if they're happening over time, they really do create kind of patterns of hope in people.
And I think what's cool with what you're saying, and one of the things that I've noticed in life, is that it's, even in the busyness of your schedule, you're still looking for opportunities to bring hope. And I think that's one of the things that distracts most of us, is the busyness of our schedules. Well, I just don't have time to stop and say, how are you doing? I don't have time to slow down and say, let's have a cup of coffee. So it's really taking the time to breathe and really see. I think one of the things we're all taught and we all know is that if you want to be known for the love, that's how, and as Christians, we're known for our love. It's not because of we're able to wave a banner of Jesus or wave a banner of my denomination. It's because of the love that I'm able to show other people.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
that's, again, I think that's really cool. So then, Nathan, with that being said, what is your hope built on?
I mean, it would absolutely be built on my faith. I mean, my
Yeah.
faith has evolved 100% from when I was much younger, and I don't think we have time for that discussion. But my hope is absolutely based on a faith that says that, you know, our number one job is to love God, and our number two job is to love people.
Mhm.
And if we're doing that, and if we're showing up for one another, that no, not that everything will be okay, but that we will know that we are doing what we are called to be doing to help shoulder other people's burdens with them, right?
Yeah.
And I think so much of this is that for me too, right? Hope does not mean that you're not stuck in the darkness for a really long time. It doesn't mean that everything's going okay. It doesn't mean that just because you do the right things or you try to show up for people that like all of a sudden everything gets easier. It doesn't mean any of that. To me, it just means it means that you are going out of your way to serve because you know that that's the right thing to be doing. And I just see people doing that all the time.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, whether they believe it or not, whether they know it or not, other people, whatever they would ascribe it to, I think that when they show up for one another like that in a selfless way,
Yeah.
it is rooted in that fact that we are created as part of, that we are part of God's creation, and that's how things should work.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree.
And I will say, Nathan, I love watching everything that you do on social, and it is so evident that you love people. I mean that, and it's so encouraging to me. And I've talked to you about this before, where there's, and one of the things I see is that you point out and you can see all the things that what actually is happening and where people are actually serving. Where I tend to see like, well, I know that I need to serve and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, but I don't see anybody else doing it. But you don't look at that. You look at, wow, these people are actually doing it and they're stepping up to the plate. And so what would your, I guess, maybe encouragement be to some that have struggles like actually seeing the good in others? There's so much negative going on right now, right? But how do you see the good in people?
Well, crying in the shower every so often helps.
Yeah, right.
I would strongly recommend, a vigorous workout 3 to 5 times a week to get your anger out.
Right,
I'm
yeah.
partially kidding, but I do, I think part of it, I do think part of recognizing the good is being okay with being frustrated with how the state of the world sometimes, right? But not letting that dictate your worldview.
Yeah.
Right. To me, I'm I was talking to somebody like last month, and I told them, I'm not an optimist, entirely. I'm not a realist. Like, I know people have those debates all the time. I am a totally defiant optimist, right? I know the world, I know how the world feels right now. I feel that way too.
Right.
But I just don't think that it does much good to dwell entirely on what feels bad. And it's not a performative thing. It's not for me, recognizing how people are showing up for one another and choosing really deliberately to point those things out, is not me trying to gloss over bad things that are happening in the world. It is me trying to point out that there are helpers. There are always helpers. They are always showing up. They are always looking at the bad and saying, like, okay, well, this may not fix it entirely, but I'm going to do something.
Right.
And to me, I think that's really, that gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
I help co-lead a local nonprofit who does food services here in the Santa Clarita Valley. And I've sat in on some of the city meetings. And, one of the things that I've always noticed that within the environment is everybody genuinely wants to solve the problem, but nobody wants to get their hands dirty doing it. And And so
Mhm.
and I think that's one of the reasons, what I love what you're saying is that why we need policies and why we need procedures and we need processes to help. We still need people who are willing to step up and get their hands dirty in the engagement
Mhm.
process, and
Yeah.
that's really how you bring hope. I mean, you mentioned something today that you have on a ballot. What is some of your guys' ideas and around that too? Is how can you bring hope to the situations that you're seeing right now?
Well, I mean, I think, so I haven't been involved in politics for a long time.
Right.
I think people in Texas think I have been, but that's because, basically after 2016, I got involved pretty heavily.
Mhm.
Um, and, Austin is a large city. It's about 1 million, but it's not huge, right? It's not Los Angeles. And so I got involved just working with some campaigns, working on some civil rights and voting rights stuff here in the state. And that got me in the position where, after a year or so, I was able to get into some rooms and have some real conversations with policymakers at the city, at the county, state, and federal level, and am grateful now to be in a lot of those rooms from time to time, just by invitation. But politics is kind of a game of hot potato. Like
Yeah.
nobody wants to be holding it. Everybody wants credit for having like touched it, but
Yeah.
like they don't want to be caught with it. And I think a lot of that is due to the way that people react to politics,
Right.
as opposed to seeing it as a game where you're making incremental changes and progress on a thing. I think because of the fact that our country has for so long put off making big decisions that could have a real impact on people's lives, um, people are now hoping that we have revolutions of a sort. And I do
Yeah.
think we've got to have some major policy changes on some major issues.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change the fact that at the end of the day, you know a small good change is still good.
Yeah.
And that this stuff is really, really messy. And so, today in Austin, we've got a ballot initiative. The hot one in Austin is Prop B. And Prop B essentially undoes what Austin City Council did in 2019. So in 2019, Austin City Council decided that they were going to, the term is decriminalize homelessness, right? So sit, camp, lie, panhandle. A lot of other cities have done this, and City Council did this in 2019, and now there's a ballot initiative to reinstate that ban.
Right.
And it's provoked a lot of discussion, to put it lightly,
Yeah.
a lot of anger, a lot of backlash, and I've got my views on that. I'm against reinstating this. I don't think it's the right policy, but I do understand why people are upset about it.
Right.
And to me, I think regardless of what happens in an election like this, the way that I would look at the issue is, if this ban gets reinstated, we still need a plan to deal with this
Yeah.
in the short term, in the medium term, and the long term. If the ban does not get reinstated, we still need a plan to deal with this in the short term, the medium term, and the long term. And the problem isn't that this ban is going to do anything on this issue. The problem is that we don't have a fully adopted plan that City Council is able to report back on and push forward on progress. The city just adopted one, but we're getting way too in the weeds
Yeah.
for this podcast, I think.
Yeah, no. And again, the reason I'm asking that is just, again, it goes back to, we'll just use the great quote, right? Be the change you want to see in the world, right? And I think it's, and we talked about worldviews, right? And one of my worldviews is that it's a broken world. And it's the choices that I make every day that can make the difference in how this thing comes together, right? So in my choices, and all my choices have an impact on people, good or bad, right?
Yep.
So, and so if I'm at least thinking in that mindset, I got a broken world, and every day I got to make a choice to be a difference. The choice I make should either bring good, it should always bring good and not bad. So I have to always think about the choices I'm making, even when I go into it. And I think that is one of the challenges I think that we face as a nation, is just our inability to recognize the brokenness and then say, how am I going to make the difference? And it's
Right.
not by perpetuating anything that's further causing the problem. It's by being the good I want to see in the world.
Right. Well, and I do feel like, we have this constant debate, and we've had it forever, since the founding of this country, whether or not it's collective good and we need collective solutions, or it's personal responsibility and we need personal solutions. And like, my answer to that is yes, like both. Like, why do we even have to, like, that is a completely false choice. I mean, I think we have to think collectively. We're a nation of 330 million people in 50 states, and we've got these very convoluted governmental structures that, yada yada yada. But we still have a duty to make sure that we are making collective choices that are good for the most number of people possible.
Right.
At the same time, that does not mean that we shouldn't be asking people to, take responsibility, to constantly look for ways to serve in their community themselves, to look for ways that, as individuals, they can make a better life for themselves, for their family, for their communities, things like that. I mean, those things go hand in hand to me.
Yeah. No, and I agree wholeheartly. I really do. David, I know you wanted to say something.
Well, I was going to say, you said something about, getting involved in the community and things. I know I've reached out to you about, okay, what are some ways, like, so here I'm in Newburgh, Oregon, right? I want to be involved in the community. I don't know how, what that entails. I don't know what I want to do yet, but I do absolutely love people, and I know it's
very obvious.
Yeah. I know it's recognizing the needs of others around and things like that, but what are some ways, because you are involved heavily in the city of Austin, but what are some ways for people, who can they contact? How do they go about getting involved in something like that? Who wants to make a difference in the community?
Yeah. I mean, I think, first of all, neighborhood groups, church groups, like, all those things are great. In addition, if you care about any issue, there's definitely a nonprofit that is probably looking for a board member, or are constantly looking for board members, that I think people can volunteer their time for. And I'm not sure, governmental structures are totally all over the map. But, in Austin, I was appointed by 2 different members of city council to 2 different commission seats. And that kind of stuff is almost always an option, right? If you want to get involved on the policy side in a way that maybe is a little bit more issue specific, but still, the thing that I would say is the commission work that I'm doing is really interesting, because it's probably the most apolitical work that I do, because we're hearing about what's going on in various sectors of, infrastructure and transportation and job creation from people in the community. We're also hearing from governmental agencies, and then we're making recommendations to council. And that kind of stuff is really fun for me, because I'm a total nerd and I love it. So if you want to get involved in something directly related to your city's policy or your county's policy, they probably have commissions or boards. I don't know what the process would look like outside of Austin, but I would assume there's an application process for it. But yeah, I would say, church neighborhood groups, nonprofit boards, and, city commissions or boards are a really good way to get started.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for that.
So you mentioned already now what your hope is built on. Now the question to me is, where have we talk about in the show is kind of that 2020 vision, the hindsight is 2020. Where have you seen that hope manifested in your life that's kind of led you to a place of where that you're secure in that, so what were some times where your life had been, you'd gone through some things and you were challenged and you were feeling maybe a little hopeless and you had to cling to your hope?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned earlier that I'm raising $100,000 for cancer research right now with Leukemia Lymphoma Society. And one of the darkest moments in my life was definitely in 2012 when our friend Ron Jones passed away from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Mm.
Ron was my youth pastor and one of my best friends, and became my mentor over time. He and I started a church together. We had a little falling out. We built our relationship back up. And in September of 2012, he got diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma. He thought it was going to be relatively easy to beat. And he passed away within less than 3 months. He got diagnosed the end of September, passed away December 8th. And I just remember, I go into caring for other people mode, right? So other people are really sad about this. They're really beat up by it. And so I go into this mode where I'm just trying to make sure everybody else is okay. And then once it calmed down, a few weeks after he passed and we had the memorial, it was just such an incredibly dark time. And it's with that in mind. It's with, a lot of other families that I know we all know from Heart of the Canyons who have gone through, battles with or lost battles with cancer. My mother-in-law, Amanda's mom, Kathy, she passed away from breast cancer in 2016. And I just don't know anybody whose life hasn't been affected by it, which is why we've got this kind of audacious goal, and we got about 6 weeks to meet it. But for me, I saw hope through those moments when, y'all know this, right? I mean, if you're in or seen as any kind of leader, sometimes it can feel a little bit lonely. Like, you're in a position where you are caring for other people and other people aren't very often asking how you're doing. And in those moments, it was the people that would come around me and really push to be like, are you taking care of yourself? Are you, what can I do for you? Those are real growth moments for me because, I feel a real responsibility to other people. And that means I can often forget to take care of myself and my own mental health. And those moments, like when Ron passed, when people would go out of their way to make sure I was okay, those kinds of moments, that's a shadow proves the sunshine moment for me. Where the hope really shows up in that dark moment and reminds me just how incredible people can be when they show up for other people.
Did you ever at any time during that period with Ron and that, did you ever once question your faith, your God, for why letting this happen or anything like that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I definitely remember driving around. There's a songwriter named David Ramirez. And I forget what the track is. But he's got this one song where, I mean, it's really just one of those songs of lament, right? Where it reads like one of those Psalms where, David is just absolutely screaming out and questioning God. And I can remember driving around, like tears rolling down my face, not even trying to answer the question, but just really, really pissed off.
Yeah. Because one of the things I'm trying to point out on the show as well is that even though we may say that our faith is in Christ and that it doesn't mean that it's a magic wand and I don't go through pain and suffering. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and I definitely, I would say, I think those are the times, right? Those are either the times where those really, really big, dramatic, heartbreaking moments are the ones where you either your hope is either reinforced, or it is stripped away. And I don't necessarily think that is a choice for people, right? I think there are some really, really incredible people who are very hopeful and also very cynical.
Yep.
You know, I don't think it needs to be all sunshine and daisies all the time. And I think we lose an aspect of what makes hope hopeful
Yeah.
if we don't allow ourselves to feel everything that comes with being in those dark moments.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to recognize when you're in one of those, you know, and to let yourself feel everything you're going to feel, and to like, if you're going to have a week where you're just absolutely just heartbroken and angry, great. You know, just know that you can get beyond that, and that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, good Lord, this last, you know, you said 2020 in relation to vision just a second ago, and I had a little PTSD because 2020 was 2020 was something, and we're still not fully out of it. You know, I got my second vaccine shot this week, and that felt quite incredible. But like, wow, this has been a really dark year and a half. But seeing tiny glimpses of people getting together for coffee and families hugging again, and, you know, communities getting back together. I mean, that stuff makes all the sacrifice that we made as a country and as a world over the last year makes it worth it. So, you know, I think those really dark moments are when you start to see those little pinpricks full of light come through, you know, and you start to see other people doing all these things that make the world a little bit better. I mean, those little pinpricks of light are, you know, eventually overwhelm the darkness. And that is really, 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 really incredible to watch every time it happens.
Yeah. And I think what's cool about what you just said there is just that and that's one of the things we love to share with people, even in Hope, is that things have happened in your life that have been really positive and good. It's just that in that moment of darkness in your life, that it's hard for you even to go back. And so that's where other people coming in and saying, hey, you remember when this happened for you? You remember when that happened for you? And all of a sudden you can actually start to allow them to even see the hope that they've already had in their own life, and seen some of the brightness that has come through in those dark periods of their life. And it really reestablishes and brings them through on the other side.
Yeah. And part of it, I think, again, is just being willing to say, yeah, I'm in a very dark place.
It does.
You know, and I think there's this tendency to want to try to fight your way out. And I, you know, to me, I just personally have found that to be counterproductive, right? When you're using all your energy to deny yourself a feeling that you're legitimately feeling, and that if you'd sit with for a little while, eventually those good things start happening, and you start recognizing them, and you start coming out of it. Right. And I think fighting to pull yourself out in a way that is unhealthy. I'm not talking about, like, you know, I think everybody should probably have a therapist, or at least a close group of friends that you can talk to and talk about how you're actually feeling. Things like that, a pastor, a faith group, a community, like all those things. But I don't think trying to deny that you're going through something, or push yourself to not feel pain or heartbreak or anything like that, I don't think that's healthy. So
good. Well, I know I'm just happy that you were able to be a part of this today, and I really enjoyed hearing your hope and hearing some different projects. I know we got into some politics there, but we didn't go too deep. I think all of it, you know, one of the things this is our world, right? It's about navigating life together and trying to be the best version of myself, so that I can bring the greatest amount of hope to those that are around me. And so, you know, and so again, and I think all of that comes together. And so I really do appreciate it. I appreciate all the work that you're doing. I really do. You mentioned from a fundraising perspective, the leukemia. Can you go ahead and just, where would people go to find out more information about that?
So right now, if you go to my website, nthnryn.com. So Nathan Ryan, no A's, nthnryn.com. There's a link at the very top that says for the fundraiser. And then there's also another link a little bit further down that'll take you straight to my donate page. And then I'm happy to give you all the link if you have show notes or anything that can go direct to that. But I'm really, really excited that y'all are doing this. I mean, the fact that a father and son are doing a show like this is just, you know, my dad and I have such a great relationship, and it brings me a lot of joy to see that y'all have this kind of relationship too. I think it's really awesome.
No, thank you. I really do appreciate it, Nathan, and wish you the best in the things that are coming up for you. And good luck on today's elections votes. I hope it goes the way you're hoping. And
if it doesn't, we live to work another day, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. But thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun. Y'all are great.
All right, Nathan. Thanks a lot, man. Have a good one.
Yeah.
You too.